everyone. If you could all take your seats, we can get started here. So anyways, I am Carol Parker. I am the Director of Natural Resources for the League of Women Voters, North County, San Diego. So we are here today for Food Fight for the Climate, how we can fight climate change 3 times a day. Does that work? Yay. So I just want to tell you a little bit about League of Women Voters, North County, San Diego. We're over 60 years old, and we've been empowering voters and defending democracy in North County. So we work to encourage active and informed public participation in government and to increase understanding of major public policy issues. We never support or oppose any political party, elected official, or candidate for office. We do have priority issues that we take positions on. And our main focus is voter service, making democracy work. And you'll see us during the primary and the general election with talks about the propositions, as well as hosting candidate forums, which I think are very useful. In addition to that, we have housing and homelessness, and also water. We have a really amazing water group. There are so many water issues in San Diego County that I have learned about through this group. It's really, truly amazing of people who are in the business. And then we also have the climate change, which is what our group is putting on today. So if you're not a member, I know I see a lot of members out there, but if you're not a member, please, we would love for you to join our group. And you can join us at our website at lwvncsd.org. So anyways, here we are for Food Fight for the Climate. So I was thinking I'd put up some pictures, beautiful pictures of food, and then I'm like, well, really, all the pictures I have of food are people smiling. And they're smiling because they're eating In-N-Out burger or having a birthday party or in a big group. Because food really is the stuff of life. And it's a basic right. Only air and water are more important to our lives. And how we deal with food can be an extension of our values. So, and we determine what we eat 3 times a day for the most part. So, okay. So before we go into how food affects the climate, I just want to briefly discuss what a greenhouse gas is. The climate is warming because we are putting too much greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. Gases like CO2, carbon dioxide, or nitric oxide, or methane are trapped in the atmosphere. And these gases retain heat that comes from the sun and irradiated back from the Earth's surface. And in the beginning of life, this was a good thing, but it has become out of balance because we have been burning too many fossil fuels, and that stays in the atmosphere. Okay, so now we'll go to how does food affect the climate? Well, we have food choice, where we have emissions from the different types of food production. And then also there's the other aspect of food production is, was the rainforest destroyed to graze the cattle of the beef you ate? Then we have food waste, when we have a lot of methane being produced from rotting food in landfills. And then we have, on the other side, we have composting that will build soil health and increase carbon in the soil and can transform your backyard. And then we also have food rescue because good food feeds people. And it makes use of the resources that went into making that food. And we also have food container recycling, which we're really just having a table to help you identify what you can recycle. Okay, so how big is the problem? It's actually huge. The problem is much bigger than people have been talking about. The UN IPC report that came out last year stated that changes in the agriculture, food systems, and forestry sectors could provide nearly 1/3 of the greenhouse gas reductions needed to meet the UN targets. So that's really a big deal. And also, if you look at the sources of greenhouse gases in the US, and yeah, I think you can see that. So the pie chart shows the different sectors of the economy and how much the different sectors are emitting greenhouse gases. And there's agriculture, which is at 10%, and that is a significant amount. So agriculture is the red pie, piece of pie, and that is where we grow food. But there's a lot more to eating food and food in our culture than just growing the food. We have shipping, which is the green transportation sector. We have grocery stores and restaurants use the commercial as well as the electric power sectors in the orange and purple. And us consumers, we are driving to grocery stores or restaurants, and that we are, using our the residential sector as well as the electric power sector when we are making the food, using the gas in our stove. So, and then finally waste. Again, we have transportation, and also it's the commercial and residential sector includes, accounts for waste. So we have different aspects of food in every sector of our economy that's producing greenhouse gas. Okay, so this is a slide. You are not expected to read this, I'm sorry. But those of you know League of Women Voters like to take well-researched positions and write things down. And so the League of Women Voters California, I'm sorry, wasn't close enough. The League of Women Voters California has taken many positions, and from that we determined a set of actions that we suggest for food, and they have 7 actions in this climate smart agriculture and food action policy. Today we're only going to be talking about 4. So I'll go to the first one. The first one, this is long-winded, I'm sorry. Promote education and transparency about agricultural practices, including the social and environmental costs and impacts of producing agricultural goods. So an example of transparency in food is beef. And some of you might be vegans, so this doesn't apply to you. But do you know where your beef comes from? Who knows where their beef comes from? Oh, do you know it if you go to a specific farmer's market, or if you get a side of beef, you know where your beef comes from. Otherwise, it's a trick question. You really can't know where your beef comes from based on the labeling in the grocery store, because the labeling for everything, just about everything, is made in or a product of the USA. But since 2015, that labeling is not accounting for country of origin. So because you can graze the cattle in Canada, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, or Brazil even, and bring it as a big hunk of meat, or even the cattle, or even the animal, and then it's processed, and then it's a product of the USA. So that actually is the country of origin, is one of those things that we're hoping to advocate that they change. Because it really, who of us would like our beef grown in Brazil? Because we all have heard about how the Amazon is being burned and cut down. The main reason is so they can graze cattle. And it's like we might have actually had Brazilian beef. Because I actually eat beef. Not as much as not as little as I should, but did you know that we have, last year we imported a billion pounds of beef from Canada. I think that's amazing. But it's also almost a half billion from Brazil. So it's quite possible that we have been eating Brazilian beef. Okay, so the next action we have is promote and support policies and actions that reduce both food loss and waste and recover it for distribution or repurpose. So today we have several speakers that are going to be talking about food waste as well as food rescue. So we're going to be covering that well. And I just wanted to take my little time to talk about how big the problem of food waste is. If this statistic has been around a long time. If global food waste was its own country, it would rank as the third biggest greenhouse gas emitter behind China and the US. But the UN, I was just looking up, and the UN is still has that statistic. In addition to that, the resources needed to produce that food that has been lost or wasted has a footprint of 3.3 billion tons of CO2 every year. So it's actually really quite big. And the other fun fact I wanted to bring up, and then we'll be talking about it, is that managing waste in California is determined by jurisdiction. So each of the 8 cities in the unincorporated county in North County have chosen how to deal with the waste in their jurisdiction. Okay, so the next action that we're promoting is that promote climate-smart agricultural practices that include creating healthy soils and ecosystems. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but because that is really about composting or building healthy soils. It's all about building healthy soils is the big thing. And we're having a speaker on that. And the last thing we're talking about is promoting education about climate benefits of eating a healthy, plant-forward diet. And so I have, a graph here that has, food choice matters. And this is 100 grams of protein from beef, lamb, milk, fish, poultry, eggs, grain, tofu, peas, and nuts as you go down the graph. And it's pretty obvious that beef has a huge carbon footprint, and where even it's the amount of carbon emitted in the production of beef is 10 times that of chicken. It's 100 times that of peas, and it's almost 200 times that of nuts. So you can make a choice, and you can, it's actually it's easier than you think, I think, to lower your carbon footprint just by what food you choose. Okay, so really, the bottom line is eat less beef and more of just about anything else. One thing that I find kind of fun is committing to Meatless Mondays. Because once I committed to Meatless Mondays, I found all kinds of recipes that I could then feed my family, and and several of us have put recipes in the back that you can take pictures of that are our favorite vegan or vegetarian recipes. So that I just wanted to, I started Meatless Mondays over 10 years ago, and my kids went with it, my husband went with it, my father now goes with it, and they expect it, and it's actually kind of fun. It's way more interesting than I ever thought. So, okay, so then the last, again, we were going to talk about recycling. Not really talking about it so much. The only thing I wanted to say is that I went on a tour with the EDCO recycling group, and it was very inspiring. They were very committed to recycling, and so there's organics recycling, which we're going to talk about with food waste. Then there's recycling of containers. And it also, the recycling has a few different rules And you can see it back on we have the chart that's different for Oceanside versus Carlsbad versus the EDCO cities. But with EDCO, they're very committed to recycling, and they say if you put the right thing in the right bin, they're going to recycle it. So we'll go with that. Okay, so next we have our first speaker, which is Nancy Sublette. And Nancy is also a member of League of Women Voters, North County, San Diego. And she started as an RN before migrating into healthcare administration, focusing on managed care. And she had served on several boards, including a city board of health and other nonprofit healthcare organizations. So welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Carol, you've done a great job of setting the stage for a lot of information. This is just voluminous, all the aspects of our lives that this topic touches. I think that we are going to save questions till the end, and I believe you have cards on your table, so if you have a question, go ahead and make a note, and we'll get to that. I also wanted to let you know I brought the oranges. They're not totally, they're mandarin oranges. They're not totally orange on the outside, but they're very tasty. I asked Carol if we could postpone this session for about another week or two till they totally turned orange, and she said no, that wasn't a possibility, so there they are. So first I'd like to establish some context at a societal level. We've lived in a linear economy at least since World War II, but probably before that, where the philosophy was kind of a make, take, and waste. I don't know how many of you remember your grandmother's darning socks, but now if you have a hole in your sock, most people just throw it out. So in a linear economy, natural resources are turned into products that are ultimately destined to become waste because of the way they've been designed and manufactured. But that's changing, and there wasn't any one person who's responsible for this change into a circular economy. Okay, I'll advance my slide here.
Oh, yeah.
There we go, got it. Or even a specific date. But in looking back at the research on this topic, which is extensive, if you go to Wikipedia, under circular economy, there are 278 references about this. So throughout the world, countries and individuals and industries are determining how to use our natural resources and reuse them rather than create new. So it's called a circular economy, and it's made up of principles that evolve around reuse, sharing, repair, refurbishing, different methods of manufacturing, and recycling to create a closed loop system. So we're not just throwing away things and wasting. Our form of life has not taken into consideration that there may be a limitation on natural resources. But now with climate change, we're beginning to realize that we've had an effect on that. Developing new products is from recycled waste is an entrepreneurial effort that's happened over the last 10 years and will continue to happen. The poster with the 7 types of plastic over there, which is interesting information, on the far right-hand column shows products that are made from each of those plastics. And those lists will expand as we become more dedicated to reusing and repurposing materials in our lives. Plastics really create a lot of uncertainty in recycling, and there's the other poster that I've created is a list of things to go in each bin in each city, because we're in North County, a League of Women Voters. So in just the big cities, we've got Encinitas and Carlsbad and Oceanside, and their lists are different, what they can recycle. And it's determined by markets that they have to sell these recyclables. So legislation is being developed and has passed to kind of standard all this. And I want to put in a plug for the League of Women Voters here, because we're electing our legislators. And so to get to know them, we have sponsored candidate forums for years and years. And we've found in the last few elections that candidates are less willing to participate in these forums. But as a public, these are public servants that we're electing. So we need to push to have our candidates appear amongst their competitors to share information about how they would handle certain problems, so we can be more educated voters. So I hope you keep that in mind when the candidates start showing their literature or arrive at your door. Talk to them about participating in candidate forums, because that's the way to inform the voters the best. So legislation's been considered to address a lot of the inconsistencies that we have in cities of what's recyclable, and to improve product packaging to reduce the use of plastics. So here are a few bills, and all of these are already passed. Senate Bill 343 standardizes the use of the recycling symbol, which is the arrows that go like this. When you see that on a package, you just assume it's recycling, and you may just have put it in your bin, but there hasn't been a standard required of the manufacturers to say, well, you can't put that label on unless it meets certain criteria. So Senate Bill 343, which was passed in 2021, has done that, and it continues to be rolled out to make manufacturers aware. The other thing that it does is to say, we're not going to say this product can be recycled if there's not a market for it. So, you know, you may be putting things in your recycling bin that at the recycling place they're just getting rid of because there's no market. So this Bill 343 will, studies are underway right now to measure what is being recycled in the state. So new labeling will be out, but it takes years to get these things done because of public input and thoughtful conversations. Senate Bill 54, which just passed recently, is called the Plastic Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Act. And I'm so happy they haven't tried to make an acronym out of that so that we could all talk more logically about it. But according to CalRecycle, about 25% of what is in our landfill is from packaging. You know, you buy something, you take the cardboard that's attached to the plastic and you put it in the trash because it's not all recyclable. So the rulemaking is currently underway and at CalRecycle, and they're having meetings monthly. They're going to miss the holiday months but start back up in January. So if you have any interest in hearing these conversations and what people are talking about, you can get on the CalRecycle site and just say, I want to attend a meeting on Senate Bill 54. You'll find out when it is. They're Zoom meetings, so it's really very interesting. And this takes us right into Senate Bill 1383, which is changing our lives maybe more closely than any of the other bills have. And it has to do with where how we eliminate our waste. So there were 4 components of Senate Bill 1383, which was passed 7 years ago, and it's just now kind of coming in front of our face. But the 4 components were to eliminate the organic waste from the landfill for the purpose of reducing methane emissions, to recover food to feed the insecure, to reduce animal waste in the landfill from the cattle and the dairy farms, and to increase sustainable production of renewable gas, including biomethane and biogas. So I'm going to come back to this slide in a minute, but just to give you, Carol provided me with this slide, and it shows agriculture is the top source of methane in the United States. But this bill 1383 specifically addresses the landfills at the 17% and the agriculture at 36%. So right there is about half of what's going into the landfill that's creating methane. Methane is not as, well, I'm not going to use that word. Methane burns hotter than CO2. It's thought to be not as, and Carol's our resident scientist. I just try and digest what I can read and try and understand it. But CO2, methane burns hotter than CO2, but it lasts for a shorter period of time. So it's worthwhile to spend time and effort to get rid of methane in our system. And then organic waste, and this is a recycle slide from Cal Recycle. It's the largest stream of waste in California, and 52% of our waste stream in California is organic. So this bill 1383 is going to try and take the organics, not try, but make huge efforts to take the organics out of our landfill to reduce methane production. So I want to go back to this 1383 because I'm going to reference this. Back in the bill, which was passed in 2016, was supposed to be in full effect by 2022. Well, as you all know, in 2020 we had COVID and it kind of set the world on pause, and so we didn't hear much about this. In 2021, Carol and I thought it'd be interesting to go around to the cities and see what they were doing about this bill that was going to significantly affect the way that we handled our trash, and see how they were doing on implementation. And the results were really dependent on who their waste carrier was. Encinitas uses EDCO, Carlsbad uses Republic, and Oceanside uses Waste Management. So it was dependent on who their waste vendor was and what aspect of 1383 they wanted to attack first, and how much outside resource they were willing to purchase. And although this, how they started and whether or not they were progressing is really not relevant, it does point to the role that our city council plays in some of these processes that have to be implemented into laws or rules within a jurisdiction. And the League of Women Voters this last year, Rosette Garcia, our president, and many others went to every city that's in North County and said, we would like to sponsor your candidate forums for your city council meetings. And so some of them weren't having candidate forums, and one city relied on the Chamber of Commerce to do it, which, you know, may have created a little bit of a tilt of how it all worked out. So we made that offer, and the purpose was to agendize that topic so that the city could vote on it. And we haven't, as far as I know, we haven't heard back from the cities yet, but it will be coming up. And I think this would be an excellent exercise for all of us to get to know the city council people. You see their flyer and what they've done and how many kids they have and that sort of thing, but you don't really get to talk to them about issues that are going to affect your community. So hopefully the league will be successful there, and as you talk to the city council candidates, let them know you'd be interested in seeing them in a debate forum, which the league is very well known, tried and true experience in conducting these forums. Oceanside, I was talking about how the cities were doing things differently, mainly because they're waste carriers. Oceanside is here today and going to tell us their story, which is interesting. Obviously, other cities in the state are not fully implemented with 1383 yet either. And a couple years after it was supposed to be in effect, or before 2022, the legislature realized that nobody's going to get this done, and we have to do something because we want this to progress. So they passed Senate Bill 619, which says, cities, you tell us that you have an intent to comply with this law, and then keep us updated on what you're doing. And after time has passed, we'll go back and see if your intent really fulfilled what you expected would do. There are significant penalties that were first assigned for not complying with 1383. And I expect that in the future, those same penalties will come back around. So the city has a financial interest in the penalties they could have to pay if they don't make the progress that is expected. You know, in the bill, it specifically states in 1383, it says there's no money. The state is not giving you any money to get this done. But if you think about everything the city had to go through to make these changes with their waste management dealers, with educating the public, it was incredible. But Cal Recycle has made some significant investments. They've given $202 million in grants to cities that have applied for that. They've given $21 million in loans to cities that have asked for that. They've got $240 million pending in grants to be awarded, and they've got a new $154 million in organic grants that are coming soon. And this came from a conference call with Recycle that I participated in. So these figures are directly from Cal Recycle. That's a lot of money. The state may not have paid, but the cities have an opportunity to access this money that will help them do their job. And since we're talking about penalties, I wanted to share, I attended one of these conferences and heard about cities that have already gone through the full implementation of 1383. Because I was wondering, how are they going to know if somebody's complying? Well, believe it or not, the city staff in the cities that are implemented, what they do is they'll go to the transfer station and look at the recycling dump that just came from that truck. And if there's a lot of contamination, they'll look at what neighborhood they'd been to, and then they'll go to the neighborhood and lift the lids, do a random audit to see, okay, does your blue bin have food in it? Does your green bin have trash in it? And they'll start notifying the cities that are in full effect now. They're notifying the resident by putting a little tag saying, you're out of compliance, this is what's the matter. It's an educational, not a stick, but more of a carrot, you know. We're trying to teach you how to do this, but in the future there will be penalties. And one city is already starting penalties, and they're $50 for one violation. And then the next violation can be more, and the third violation can be greater than that. And the violations vary if you're individual or if you're commercial. And I share this because people are going to be outraged about this. But if we don't do this, we don't accomplish the goal, and the city is going to owe a lot of money to the state for lack of compliance. So, you know, it has to start somewhere. So I wanted to share that. So getting back to this 1383, I've just talked about organic waste for probably my full 7 minutes, but recovering food to feed the food insecure, we have experts on that are going to address that. Reducing the animal waste in the landfill is not something that Cal Recycle is working with. Instead, the California Air Resource Board has been tasked to address that issue. And they've been having meetings, and they're working with other organizations, and they have reported that they don't plan to implement anything before 2024. So I'm not very knowledgeable about what's even happened to date, other than to see a couple grant projects are happening within the state to see if it works. So That's a big task, but as you will recall on the slides we looked at, that animal waste is a big part of the methane production. So increasing sustainable production of renewable gas, I can tell you EDCO's had this digester for a few years now, and an anaerobic digester, you all probably know, takes the oxygen out of the organics that they have in there and converts it to
Takes the methane.
excuse me, thank you. Takes the methane out, and then they're using that end product, to fuel their trucks to go around. So perfect example of the circular economy. So California cities have a big job to get this all put in, and most of the waste management contracts are evergreen or for long periods of time, and you don't just go in and say, okay, this new legislation, now we need you to start educating people and, you know, pick up differently. Let us put our garbage in the green bin. So that's taken some time to get done. They have to establish the edible food programs. They have to educate the people, because if the people don't know what they're supposed to do, the city's going to end up with a financial penalty. And you can see the reporting to Cal Recycle is extensive. And on the Cal Recycle site now, they have a database to measure how cities are doing, how many tons of whatever they're disposing of, and it will measure progress on 1383 to get the food out of the mainstream waste. So our cities are working hard for us, and hopefully this has given you some information that you haven't been exposed to before.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Our next speaker is from Green Oceanside, and we can hear everything that Green Oceanside is doing. We actually have two people from Green Oceanside. We have Lindsay Leahy, who's a principal water engineer from the city of Oceanside, and she's going to be here, and maybe she can answer questions in the end. But speaking today is Brice Hagan, and Brice studied environmental science at the University of California, Berkeley, where he developed an interest in sustainability and zero waste. He is now with the City of Oceanside Water Utilities Department and works with Green Oceanside team in solid waste and recycling. So thank you, Brice.
Thank you, Carol. All right, hi everyone. My name is Brice. I'm here with the City of Oceanside Water Utilities District, and I'm representing Green Oceanside. So to start, what is Green Oceanside? Green Oceanside is the City of Oceanside's collective environmental compliance and education program. So what really is it? Sorry.
There we go.
There we go. Green Oceanside is a resource for the public to learn how to actively protect and protect the environment through community involvement and engagement. So what is Green Oceanside comprised of? We're housed within water utilities, and we have the core divisions of watershed protection, water use efficiency, community choice energy, and the zero waste program, of which today I'll be presenting on our zero waste program. So in discussing zero waste, it's really helpful to set up a roadmap for where Oceanside started to where we are now. But there's also a lot of different definitions that people use when defining zero waste. So how do we define zero waste? Operationally, zero waste is defined as a 75 to 90% diversion from landfill. So where did this begin in Oceanside? In 2010, our city council passed a resolution identifying a 75% diversion rate goal. This established the 2012 Zero Waste Plan, which outlined the beginning of zero waste in Oceanside. As we can see, in 2014, the state of California passed AB 1826, which established mandatory commercial and organics recycling. However, in Oceanside, thankfully, we already had a lot of community support, as can be evidenced by our Oceanside Unified School District taking the step to become the first school district in the nation to commit to the goal of zero waste. This was assisted by the city's Zero Waste Schools program, which was completed in 2019. In 2016, the city of Oceanside, ahead of the state's own ban, passed a plastic bag ban impacting major retailers. And this was our step kind of looking forward of how we want to tackle these problems that are really prevalent in our waste streams. In 2018, the city conducted the organics feasibility study. What this organics feasibility study did is it looked at really a baseline for what organics processing is going to look like in Oceanside and how we're going to be able to roll that out to our residents. As part of that organics feasibility study, it identified the Organics to Energy Biosolids Master Plan, which outlined the food scraps to energy project we will discuss later on. So in 2019, the city was able to make local investments into the Green Oceanside Food Recovery Kitchen, which provided infrastructure for commercial food processing and is what we refer to as a value-added processor to assist food recovery organizations. In 2019, the city amended our franchise agreement with Waste Management as part of our first steps towards compliance with SB 1383. So what that amendment did is it provided for the rollout of commercial and multifamily food scraps and food soiled paper recycling. In 2020, we updated our zero waste plan, which outlined how over the next 10 years we're going to take steps for compliance with all state mandates and regulations. Part of that plan also outlined a 5-year plan for compliance with SB 1383. Part of the 2020 zero waste plan also identified the need to help reduce marine debris and beach litter. Two highly prevalent beach litter items are polystyrene foam and plastic bags. So in 2023, our City Council approved the Marine Debris Reduction Ordinance, which will lead to a ban on single-use plastic bags and polystyrene foam. Looking towards the future, in 2024, we will be entering a new franchise agreement with Waste Management, which provides for a host of services to become compliant with SB 1383, such as the rollout of the Single-Family Organics Recycling Program, which we will discuss later. So, minimizing Oceanside's impacts. What does this really mean? It means overall we want to reduce the amount of waste that is sent to the landfill and limit our impacts on climate change. How do we do this? We want to prevent waste at the source. And while this also refers to things we commonly think of like plastics and textiles, a big one that we want to hit on, especially here today, is food waste. So food waste contributes heavily to greenhouse gas emissions, as we learned. And in landfills, when this food waste is sent there, we're also losing out on these important resources that could be created from food waste. Things like feeding people, creating animal feed, and industrial uses like compost, mulch, and renewable energy, which can be created from both organics and food waste, or green waste and food waste. So, for those of you who live in Oceanside, you may be aware that we have an exclusive franchise agreement with Waste Management. Our current franchise agreement will be expiring and we'll be entering a new franchise agreement on January 1st, 2024. And this new agreement really provides for all those services that are going to help the city become compliant with SB 1383. What we're really doing is we're working in tandem with our waste collection provider for compliance. So this is an example of Oceanside's waste streams. And this is divided into two main categories. We have our single family residence, so for those of you with individual collection services, and then we have our multifamily and commercial. So those are collective commercial properties, apartments, townhomes, things of that nature. And the big difference between these two waste streams is that the green organics bin for single family residents will accept both green waste, so things like your yard waste, but it will also accept food scraps and food soiled paper. It will be a commingled collection. While in our multifamily and commercial, green waste and food scraps are collected separately. So this is discussing the rollout of our multifamily and commercial food scraps program. So as I mentioned before, from 2020 to 2022, on our first steps for SB 1383 compliance, we rolled out the multifamily and commercial food scraps recycling program. This was successfully rolled out to over 3,000 businesses and 30,000 residents. But the thing we really take pride in with this program is that we were able to provide technical assistance and training to all of these multifamily properties and commercial businesses, and we were able to help address concerns that they had. And something that we really promoted is that by sorting right, so they're actually sorting in their food scraps out, they're going to start noticing that they're going to have less going towards the landfill. And with less going towards the landfill, it prevents this unique opportunity for them to actually downsize their landfill services and save money. So by sorting, you're actually able to both save money and do the right thing. So another big thing that we really highlighted through this program was our education and outreach materials. So things such as this, we really wanted our multifamily and commercial properties to be able to visualize what they can put in. Now, we're going to be talking about composting. For those of you who are composters at home, you may know things like meat and bones. You don't put those in your composting thing. But because this stream is processed industrially, you're actually able to add things like meat, bones, your food soil pizza boxes, coffee grounds, compostable takeout boxes, you're able to add those things into the stream because they're processed in an industrial facility. And we can't really talk about our commercial and multifamily program without discussing edible food recovery. So what is edible food recovery? I know we'll touch more on this later, but it's the collection of wholesome food for redistribution. And we really set up a lot of resources to help our businesses set up those SB 1383 programs to support compliance locally. And we also partnered with organizations to be able to provide technical assistance to help them maximize edible food recovered. We also have our local resource of the Green Oceanside Kitchen, which provided very valuable in this rollout. So this applies for those of you who live in Oceanside. For those of you in other jurisdictions or with other waste collection providers, it may be different. But for those of you in Oceanside, we're going to have the rollout of our single-family organics program on January 1st, 2024. What this really is it's an enhancement to the green waste stream. So you're going to be able to include things like food scraps, food soil paper, along with things like your yard trimmings, twigs, leaves, all into your organics bin. And the great thing about this is these organics are all processed locally at the El Corazon compost facility on Oceanside Boulevard. So say you're an Oceanside resident, you'd actually be able to head down there today and pick up free compost for your backyard gardening. And what this really represents, and as Nancy mentioned earlier, is an example of that circular economy in action. What we're able to do is design waste and pollution out of the system to begin with. So here's some general tips for organic success because some people are a little nervous about starting this. So some great tips to help you on this program is creating what we call an organic sandwich. So you have your green waste at the bottom, layered with food scraps in the middle, and green waste on top. And some people even notice, to help with any odors they might experience, they sprinkle baking soda on the top. There's also the tip where you may keep your discarded food scraps in a food pail in your refrigerator or kitchen for the entire week and then add those at the end of the week. We also recommend placing your organics cart out every week for collection, even if it's not full. That's really going to help with all that. So moving forward with future directions, Oceanside operates its own wastewater treatment plant, unlike many other municipalities. This provides a unique and cost-effective opportunity to implement a project such as this. This is our food scraps energy product, where waste management will collect food scraps from our multifamily and commercial properties, which will then be delivered to a processing facility where they're turned into this organic smoothie, this slurry. That slurry is then delivered to our wastewater treatment and then turned into biogas, a renewable energy source. And this could have the ability to provide around the equivalent of 221 households' energy consumption per year as an approximation. And I can't really talk about our zero waste program without also mentioning some of the other additional resources that we are able to provide for our residents. We have a big push for backyard composting education. We also provide a backyard gleaning service for residents. So for any of you who may have like a lemon tree, apple tree, avocado tree, anything in your backyard, and you're not able to get to all of those, we actually have an organization that will come and collect those for you and connect those to a feeding agency. And as I mentioned, we also have free mulch and compost for all Oceanside residents. We're also really proud of our Recycle Smart tool, which allows residents to just type in any item, and it's going to give them information about how the item can be reused, repaired, donated, recycled, or disposed of. Like many other municipalities, we have a household hazardous waste program, which includes e-waste, sharps, and medications. But as part of our new franchise agreement, and something that we're really excited about, is we're going to be able to offer curbside pickup collection for our senior and disabled residents. So they won't have to drive to the facility. There's going to be a reservation basis where they can actually have these items picked up for them. We also have our bulky item pickup, our donation and landfill weeks program, where we partner with the Disabled American Veterans Store for donations, and our holiday tree collection program. So coming up the weekday after Christmas, you'll be able to take your tree, put it next to your green waste cart, and it will be processed at that El Corazon facility and turned into that compost and mulch. So thank you all for your time today. It was really great presenting, and we'll take questions at the end.
Thank you, Brice. That was very interesting. Oceanside is really, I think, is a leader in recycling and waste management. I think that's great. Okay, so and now we're going to switch gears. We have Liz Murphy, that's going to speak to us. So Liz is a chef and owner of Santosha Nutrition. I hope I said that right. It's a plant-based, zero-waste culinary business. Additionally, in 2021, she founded Sustainability is Sexy, a nonprofit focused on solutions to the global climate crisis. Liz also works for the Solana Center for the Environmental Innovation as an environmental solutions lead, working with businesses and the community during the organics recycling rollout throughout San Diego County. Very happy to have you here. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Awesome. Perfect. Okay, I'm super excited to be here. I know you guys are getting a lot of information today, and I'm giving you quite a bit more right now, so I'll do my best to make it as digestible as possible. So thank you so much for the introduction, Carol. I really focus on, with everything that I do, it intersects very well, and it all comes back to supporting a sustainable food system. So we've already talked through a lot of these, so I won't dwell on this, but just an example of many of the resources that we lose when we are wasting food. It's not just the food that's being wasted, but all of these resources that go into creating the food, bringing the food to you, and everything that's lost afterwards if we do not properly recycle those organics. This slide just gives a great example of some of the statistic, like basically what you can kind of helps you digest it a little bit more. So for example, for the wasted food we have in the US each year, so it's about 1,250 calories per person per day that we're losing. You've got 21% of the US agricultural water usage that's being lost, 18% of the fertilizer, and then of course our big one down here, $218 billion that is lost in the food that we're actually wasting each year in the US. So over 35% of food produced in the United States is wasted. That is a very large percentage. It kind of fluctuates anywhere between 33 and 40%, and the current statistic sits around 35. So organics takes up also the most amount of space in our landfills. As many of us know, our landfill filling is one of the largest issues that we're going to be seeing in our municipalities moving forward. So if we can find a way, like with SB 1383, to remove those organics from our landfills, it will significantly help our ability to utilize those landfills in the future. 40 million tons of food waste annually in the US, and then methane generated, as we've talked about throughout this presentation, 11% of those global emissions are coming from food waste. And then I love this one. If we were to redirect 50% of our national food waste, we could feed 50 million nutrition insecure Americans. And the SB 1383, as they've mentioned, has a really amazing portion of edible food recovery tied into that, that we are seeing implemented across our state. So why are we wasting food? I think that none of us wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to waste some food today. So there are a lot of reasons that this is happening. I like to point out that the largest percent of food waste is actually generated by residential homes. A lot of people may think that it's going to be restaurants and stores, and as you can see, it's just behind it, just about 3% behind it. But what I like about this statistic is, although it is daunting, it means that we as residents, we have the most opportunity to make a change here. So a few of the main reasons why food is being wasted: misunderstanding and under-regulation of expiration dates, buying too much, mismanagement of our leftovers, lack of composting education and resources, which events like this today and the cities providing these resources is a big part of this moving forward, and then the out-of-sight and out-of-mind mentality that we've developed around waste. So a little bit about the curbside organics recycling. So I think everyone's provided a lot of information about the legislation and everything, but I want to talk a little bit about how it's directly affecting you and how you can kind of successfully implement this in your own life. So the average San Diego County resident generates 5 pounds of waste per day. This is not just food waste, it's all waste, and that's an average for a San Diego resident. Most of the cities in San Diego County have rolled out some version of their curbside recycling program. For those residents here in Oceanside, as Brice mentioned, single-family homes have not yet seen that full rollout, but if you are in another North County city, you've likely seen that green bin come to your curbside, and you may be confused about how to use it. So each waste hauler and each city might have slightly different guidelines, which can be very confusing. The easiest way to think about it is if it grows, it goes. So that's a basic, but we'll go into a little bit more here. Since we had a presentation from Oceanside, I'm going to briefly speak about a couple of the other haulers. So if you are an Encinitas resident or many of the other cities like San Marcos, or if you are a Carlsbad resident, we'll go into republics. So first let's talk about EDCO. We've mentioned EDCO a couple times during today's presentations. They have a very unique system compared to a lot of the haulers, and that's due to their anaerobic digesters. So as it was, I think Nancy mentioned that the anaerobic digestion is the lack of oxygen during that decomposition process, which allows EDCO to capture that methane and use it to fuel their trucks. And then as you can see here, hopefully you can read some of it, but you can see their process here, why recycle food waste, and it shows you that they have their main anaerobic digester, their post-digestion, and then they can take that renewable gas for their trucks, for energy, for liquid fertilizer, and for raw organic fertilizer. And then over here, I have just a list of all the things that you can put in your bin as an EDCO customer. So that's going to be basically all of the classic items that we talked about, including yard waste and all of your organics or food recycling, and then also compostable items like fiber-based. I love what we have over here. So if you haven't had a chance to check this out yet, the League of Women Voters has provided a really awesome visual example of the items that you can put in your EDCO bin specifically that can be kind of confusing when it comes to compostable items. Because I think a lot of us are starting to see these items on the shelf, and unfortunately not every item labeled compostable can go in that bin. So there's really great examples over here to help us with that. And then for those of you in Carlsbad, I'm a Carlsbad resident myself, they use Republic's services. So Republic Services takes our San Diego waste to the Otay facility, which I like this little fact. It was the first solar-powered compost facility in the state of California. And then they have all of their accepted and non-accepted items. Again, it's basically the same thing, right? If it grows, it goes. Then you've got your food soil paper. But I like to include this down here. If you are a Carlsbad resident, Republic Services is the only San Diego waste hauler at this time to accept compostable trash bags. So those are those green bags. If you prefer to collect in your kitchen in a green compostable bag, you can visit their website or give them a call for examples of what's accepted. And that can be really useful for people that want to bag their items, but any other hauler or any other city, it must be not in a bag of any kind. Of course, not plastic, but not even these guys. But I actually use these in my own home because Republic accepts them. So what can we do? So I did want to briefly kind of stray away from all this talk about organics recycling and SB 1383 and talk about habits that we can implement in our kitchens, in our daily, all the rest of the parts of food that affects our lives. So eat more plants. We have talked about this already, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. As Carol mentioned, I am a plant-based chef, so I don't do meatless Mondays. I do meatless every day, but that's not realistic for everyone. But it's really important to be aware of the impact of animal agriculture on our environment. So we mentioned deforestation. It accounts for about 15% of our global greenhouse gas. We have that loss of important biodiversity, incredible water pollution across the globe, and it uses about 70% of our agricultural land. So some ways outside of eating more plants that we can support a more sustainable food system is supporting local. If you have the ability to support a farmer's market and those local farm stands, that's a great way to start. If not, you can go to local stores, places like Fraser Farms, Jimbo's. There's a few places in Carlsbad that will actually carry local farming products or locally made products. So if you can support that, that's a great way to do it. Going to local restaurants. If you're especially an Oceanside resident, but all over North County, we have a really amazing network of local food that we can support. And then regenerative agriculture. Next, don't waste food. I mean, that's what we're talking about at the end of the day today. And it's a really simple concept when we say it out loud, but it can be hard to follow through. So one great way to approach that is to buy less. So not to be taken over by all of these sales that we have going on or bulk items. If we don't actually need that much, then we're wasting money by buying those products if in the end they're just going to be wasted at home. Donate excess food. I like to mention this especially around the holidays because I think a lot of us associate donating food with food drives and things like that around like Thanksgiving and the holidays. But this is something that we can do year round. It's also something that doesn't necessarily mean donating to a food recovery organization. It can be as simple as I bought too many carrots, can I give some to my neighbor? Or I made too much chili, maybe they'd like a bowl. Just finding ways that food doesn't go to waste, you can donate it. So composting, of course, and then utilizing bulk sections in our grocery stores to avoid the excess waste from the packaging. And then back to eating more plants. So by increasing our whole plant foods in our diet, it's much better for our health. It's obviously much better for the environment. And when you can, do not support industrialized agriculture. It's like what Carol talked about. It's pretty much impossible to know where your animal products are coming from unless you are going directly to the source. So if you don't know where it's coming from, maybe avoid it whenever you can, like Meatless Mondays. It's a great idea. And then in the kitchen, I like to put this over on the side because I think this is something that people don't think about too much. When we get this opportunity and this resource, like a green bin, we think, oh, well, I don't have to worry about my food waste anymore because I have somewhere to put it. But what's a really great way to start thinking about it is think of that compost bin as the last option for your food. So finding other ways to utilize it, donate it, and keep it out of that bin, because trust me, we have plenty. So meal planning is a great way to do this. I don't mean like meal prepping where you're making all your meals in advance. It just means at the beginning of the week, taking kind of stock of what you may already have in your kitchen that you need to use up, and then making your grocery list around that. So a little bit more planning. Getting creative with your leftovers. I think that all of us have had the problem where leftovers get shoved in the back and then a couple months later we don't even know what it is anymore. And so keeping those in the front of your fridge in clear containers can be a great way to remind you to eat those leftovers. And then you can even get creative and make new recipes out of them if you're kind of getting sick of them. So again, organizing that fridge can be key, making sure that when you buy new groceries, don't just put your veggies on top of the old ones, maybe move the old ones on top so that you use those first. And then freezing and preserving. You know, I think a lot of us forget about our freezers. It ends up as a place just like those leftovers where things kind of get lost in there. What it's really meant for is, you know, like a good 6-month preservation of our food. So if you make too much of something, you can freeze those leftovers. If you buy too many berries, you can freeze them and use them for smoothies. So just utilizing that, and then when you're ready, getting creative with things like preserving, drying, dehydrating, and those more fun things. So I always like to leave people with, we don't need one person fighting food waste perfectly, we need everyone fighting imperfectly. And a few takeaways. Food waste in our landfills is a major contributor to the climate crisis. Curbside organics recycling is a great resource for food waste diversion, and we can make a difference at home and in our communities by making small changes and working together. And then I do like to put this up if anyone wants to take a photo of this, or I can give this to you afterwards. This is just one of my favorite lists of ways or of resources that are here in our community, both for food donations as residents, for composting, and different resources that you might be interested in. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I have learned so much about stuff that you were talking about, basically since the pandemic. I've really, dove into this, and I like the idea of fighting imperfectly. So I'm an imperfect fighter on this stuff. So we've been seated for a long time. Does everybody need to stand up and stretch? Okay, just want everybody to stay awake. Okay. Okay, good. So next we have Anna Patino. Anna Patino. Anna is another member of the League of Women Voters of San Diego. She is currently working as an associate director at Somos El Poder, a national Latinx fundraising institute. But more importantly, today, she is a master composter. So everyone welcome Anna. So both of your names wrong, so apologize. Slideshow.
Well, while we do that, let me ask everybody, who's doing composting at home? Okay, okay. And who has done it ever since you remember, since you were a child? Yeah, me too here. Well, for you, this is going to be a review, but for many of us, oh, sorry. Can you hear me well? Okay. So for many of you, this is going to be perhaps something you can try if you're not doing it already. In this case, I'm talking about composting at home. So transforming gardens through soil enrichment. First of all, what's composting? So composting is just grabbing those, it's just a natural process. This is from getting that organic matter, organic waste, such as the leaves, the food scraps, and making it into a fertilizer. Something that can enrich your soil and provide nutrients for your plants. In this case, could be your kitchen waste, put it in a bucket, dig a hole, or in a bin, compost bin, and that's how you can achieve the results. Now, to review the process, let's talk a little bit about the components. So we need brown material. These are dry leaves, dry branches, anything that's going to produce the carbon. Then we have the green material, which will it's going to be basically your food waste. And then we need water. So step number 1, select a spot in the backyard or somewhere away from your home. And in that area, then you're going to mix the brown materials, the green materials, together with a little bit of water. Add some water. We want it to be moisted, but not so wet. You want to also just move that compost every once in a while, because that's going to prevent some of those smells that come from the compost. The compost produces gases, and these gases they are not bad. That means that the process is working. That's what it means. It's gonna get warm, and so don't worry if you see maybe a little bit of smoke coming out. Just come back to it and move it around, making sure that it has enough air. Now, after that, it's just waiting. A lot of the soil, when it's very rich and it's ready, it's gonna be all black. So once that turns black, then you go ahead and put it in your plants. You're not gonna see any more leaves in there, any more food waste in there. So that's when you know that it's ready. Now, the reason why I'm here is because I've been doing this since I can remember. My mom is the true champion in at least in my family. And so that's why I'm here, because I want to show you how our garden currently looks. But first, so this is how the process that we're following. So from the kitchen, our food scraps, our food waste goes into a bucket, and that could be any bucket. In this case, we like ice cream, so it's our ice cream bucket. And so we are a lot of people, like 5 adults now, at home. So there's the bucket. It gets finished. So we have enough buckets. Now we go back into the yard. Luckily for us, we have plenty of space. So we choose any spot. We dig a hole in the ground and we put our scraps there. Sometimes it takes about 5 buckets to fill that up. And so we try to add some water, because in the kitchen, when we rinse like if you're cooking, if you like to cook, when you rinse your vegetables, or when you rinse, the rice that you're gonna cook, that water is wasted. That water can also go into your bucket. Your coffee, if you're making coffee, and like the granulated one, that can go into your bucket. And so you want to make sure that whatever you're rinsing, you also throw it in the bucket. It's also part of the process, because that water is going to go into the little hole there. And then that's how you're going to start achieving the soil. This process of digging your food waste into a hole is slower. If you use a composting bin, it's faster. But you want to make sure that whatever bucket you use, it has some holes. It could have a lid, and you want to move it, come back to it every once in a while. Now, for the transformation in our garden, this is some before and after photos from our home. We got it back in 2019. Now we are in 2023. That's 4 years later. This is how it started to evolve. What you see there are cilantro plants, a lot of them. And so this is more recently, November. Now they changed. We changed the vegetation, some of it. Now, a different angle, cilantro trees, and cilantro plants, and actually I brought a lot of my cilantro seeds. If anybody wants them, I brought some for you. The reason why the cilantro looks so big is because at that point it starts to flower, to produce the seeds. If you let it grow that big, then you get a lot of seeds. And let me tell you, we have a bucket full of them. Now, this is another angle of the same area, but now that was back in May with the cilantro. By mid-June, a month later, we changed the whole area. Now we were not growing cilantro. Cilantro is gone, so now we have green zucchini, we have corn, we have tomato, we have tomatillos. Here are some of the photos of that. Oh, and the papaya. The papaya grew from our composting, and it was producing papayas. Actually, it's the first time, I didn't know that papaya had branches, papaya trees, and ours has branches. I could not believe it. I was like, anyways, that's just some photos. Let's see. So this is now the more recent photo of that. That's November. Now, in November, this green zucchini is drying out. So the green pumpkin that you see here, that's actually from our produce. If anybody wants it, you can take it. And that's it. This is the last produce from this season. Now we're going to transition to different crops. Now this is a different angle from back in May. Back in May as well, and we have some avocado trees. One of the avocado trees actually is from our compost as well. It grew from our compost. And then another one we got from the nursery. And so here are actually let me just tell you that when you grow plants or fruit trees, try to trim them, because you don't want them to go so high that you can't reach the fruit anymore. So, and also like you keep them closer to you. So here is actually the produce that's here from November. So I took the photos yesterday. That's from our grafted avocado that we got from the nursery, and this one is from the avocado that's growing from our compost. You don't see this type of avocado in the store. And let me tell you that it's about the same flavor. And the seeds are what changes. This one is a little bit more elongated seed. And actually, in terms of food waste, something that people don't know is that when there's the huge plantations of avocados, a lot of these ones grow also in the same place. And guess what? All of those get wasted. Wow. All of those. Those ones don't go to the store. These ones go to the store because people don't like those ones. They like these ones. That's an avocado. Where is that? Like so we have to, in my mind, I'm thinking if an organization was willing to go out there and pick up those avocados, we could be saving a lot of extra food. And the avocados are expensive, by the way. Anyways, I do have some videos on my computer that if anybody's interested, I'm going to be giving away that bucket for anybody who's not doing composting and wants to try out composting at home. And that bucket, the pink bucket over there, is going to be for you. So come, watch my videos from 3 different people who are doing composting as well. And I believe with that, I end my presentation. Yeah. Oh, sorry to tell you, how do we maintain a garden like this? With water, right? And so we all know that we just have our sprinklers or bring the water hose to our plants. But how about your laundry water? This is another thing that I forgot to mention. And sorry if I take a little bit more time, but let me tell you that this is a bucket, right? A bucket of 4.5 gallons. So your laundry spends, per every cycle, 4 of these buckets of water. Wow. At home, we decided not to have sprinklers. We decided to use our laundry water and sometimes the hose for our plants. So that's what we do. We save our water from our laundry, and we waste the first water, that's the dirty one, and we keep the second cycle, the one that rinses your clothes. The softener doesn't harm your plants. You have to make sure that the products that you use don't harm your plants. But this is, you're basically using 8 buckets this big for every laundry that you use. If you get those nice, more recent laundry, I guess, machines, then you're saving some water. But just remember that this is just one of 8.
Cool.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anna. I love the transformation of your yard. And I think the one pictures that didn't show up so well is where you had this kind of tan dirt that turned into much darker colored dirt. And that darker color represents carbon that is sequestered into the soil. And that is healthy soil. So I think it's amazing. Okay, so our next speaker is Ben Meyer. He's from Brother Benno's, and he is the Essential Service Manager. And essential services include large-scale food rescue program that helps North County. And I just want to say that Brother Benno's is one of these great food rescue programs that not only rescues food, but feeds people, both. So welcome, Ben. Maybe here we can just turn this off.
Okay.
Or that's actually fine.
Yeah, that's good background. I don't have slides, so that's really pretty. All right, you guys can hear me, I hope. I'm Ben Meyer from Brother Benno's. I'm the Essential Services Manager. Essential Services, there is a lot of stuff, but it includes our food rescue program. We have a pretty large-scale program there. It's interesting because Brother Benno's has been doing food rescue essentially since the 80s. Brother Benno himself used to... Oh. All right, we'll try that. All right. Excuse me. Brother Benno himself used to actually go out to the grocery stores and stuff like that in the 80s and pick up food that they were just going to be tossing out and get that and bring it to the neighborhoods and distribute it to the people. Of course, their goal wasn't the effect on the climate or anything, or they just wanted to feed people. So over the years, this has built and built and built, and for the last 30 years, this is our 40th year in operation, it's developed into this massive food rescue operation where each day, 6 days a week, we're sending out 2 28-foot refrigerated trucks, refrigerated Sprinter van, other vehicles to bring in 15 to 20,000 pounds of rescued food 6 days a week. And then that all gets sorted.
Could you say that again?
The poundage? Yes. So 6 days a week, we can count on 15 to 20,000 pounds of rescued food coming in every single day, or 6 days a week. And that's an average day. We have some days that are bigger, especially around the holidays. We'll be sending the trucks out multiple times. We've had to rent other trucks to cover the routes. And we're not even touching a majority of the food generators around North County. We pick up from about 40 stores right now as it is. And that's like 6 Walmarts, 6 Albertsons, Targets, Vons, Trader Joe's, Sprouts, anything you can imagine that has anything. We're picking up from there all the time. And all of that food comes back every day, gets sorted, stored in either in our warehouse, our commercial freezers, our walk-in freezers, walk-in refrigeration units. It's all sorted every single day and then distributed back out to the community. So that process, obviously it's a ton of food. We have different programs for how we distribute that stuff. Some of it is angled towards low-income families. They come on site every day. They'll be able to shop we have like a farmer's market essentially. They can get meat, dairy items, all that kind of stuff. You're going to see an average of, in that angle, you have probably 50 to 60 head of households that'll be there, and they'll be taking food back to 5, 6, 10 individuals at their house. So a few hundred people are going to be getting food every morning from 6:30 to 10 a.m. just from that distribution point on site. Then we have our distribution point that's angled more towards the unsheltered guests or working class poor. That's where we use rescued food to cook hot meals, to make sack lunches, and then we also distribute some of the perishable items to people that are just looking for something for that day or something for the next day, something like that. And that's an average of 250, 300 people every morning are coming through that line. And those are, again, generally unsheltered individuals. So that, and then on top of all that, we have about 30 or so nonprofit partners that come down and shop on site with us every week. And that could be anything from detox centers, crisis houses, senior living facilities, daycares, sober living homes, everything under the sun. And they'll come in and shop. And there we're focused more on dietary needs of whatever their clients may be, so they have a little more opportunity to kind of shop, whereas the general public, unfortunately, as of right now, is shopping more bulk from everything. So on top of all this, it's great the two worlds have finally collided. Brother Benno's was all about feeding people, and then as 1383 came into effect, now we've seen the climate effect of all of this, and the two worlds have kind of meshed. We just kind of happen to have this huge food rescue operation already going on, and all of a sudden this thing comes in, and the city goes, well, what are we going to do now? And we kind of raised our hands and said, well, we've already been doing this, so we'll just take care of it. We partnered up with Feeding San Diego, North County Food Bank, Food Donation Connection, a lot of other kind of organizations to try to take care of this. I will say we haven't received much word from the city on how where they fit into that, but that's cool. I get it. It takes a while. I know City of Carlsbad's on top of it. They really have been awesome about coming out and checking out what's going on with food rescue, and I'm sure Oceanside's right behind it. But essentially, we've been funding that ourselves. Just so you know, to operate the operation that we do, it runs around $3.2 million a year for us to operate just the food rescue program. Part of it to all the moving parts that it takes to operate that, and we fund that all by ourselves. We don't have any state or federal funding. That's all done through grants and private donations from citizens. So right now, that's how the bulk of this, how 1383 shakes out on the other end. It's all great to tell the stores to donate all the food and all that, but what that results in is some receiver at Walmart who says, hey, I got 10 pallets of bananas, Ben, can you help me out? And I don't know, that's our gig. And so we've come up with a lot of creative ways to make sure that we're not just making more waste, right? It ends up with us and we can just throw it back in the same dumpsters. And yes, we have our waste management food scrap recycling program and our different recycling bins. And in our kitchen, we're very strict about what goes where in different bins. But if we're just throwing away the food we rescued, again, it obviously defeats the purpose of everything we're doing, you know. So we've had to get really creative, really getting out there, getting food to the people that need it. Sometimes it means shipping it down south, sometimes it means whatever it is, but this is all a result of over purchasing from these stores. That's where we run into this. We ask these receivers, how do you have 5 pallets of bananas, man? Like, how did you guys miss that one? And how does it happen every single week? Their answer is, well, it's on an automated system, it gets shipped to us, and we can't ship it back. Their policy is we have to get rid of it. So now you got some poor receiver who's stuck with 6 pallets of bananas or whatever it might be, and he doesn't know what to do with it. So they call us up and we say, all right, here we go. So that's where these composting organizations, you know, Community Roots Farms, some of these places, some of the pig farmers that we know, that's where we end up getting rid of this stuff. But it's a mad dash all the time, every day for us to clean up this mess all the time is what it is. I hope it gets better, and I hope more people start stepping in, but assistance from the city, assistance from, you know, anything like that could really help food rescue operations, because there's other ones doing it, but we are kind of the bigger, more large-scale one in North County, and I can tell you it takes a lot to keep this going every single day. I literally came from the center right over here to do this, and I'm going to go back because we got to send out more trucks today to do more stuff. So I guess that's just kind of how Senate Bill 1383 shakes out on the other end. You know, this is how it looks when they implement it, when they provide the policies and procedures and what the penalties are going to be and all that. But then what do you do with it all? And that's where Brother Benno's and other organizations step in, and that's our efforts to try to make sure that waste doesn't make its way back to the landfill. If we can get food in a stomach rather than a trash can, we're all about it. So that's kind of what we do, and I hope that is good. So I don't know. That's all I got. So.
Yeah, so, well, thank you, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to wrap up, and then we can have questions. And I just want to say that Nancy and I, you know, started in 2021 and looking to see what the cities were doing. And we found that the cities have really amazing organizations, and that a lot of it comes back to residents, about how residents need to be encouraged and educated, and, you know, maybe even pushed to scrape their plates, and talk to your neighbors about using the green bins, and really, because I know a lot of mine don't. So people are concerned about smell, and there's lots of different reasons, and I'm happy to talk to anybody to give more tips. I use the freezer, but anyways, I just want to say thank you so much to all of our speakers. Everyone has been, you know, really helpful, and it's just shocking to see how big even the food rescue program that Brother Benno's does, because I know there's lots of other food rescue programs too. So I mean, it's just a huge problem that I think that we can then make into a great feeding solution. So thank you all to everyone, and we're open for questions. So Anne had a question for.
When you say people come and shop, do they pay or do you just give it to them?
Oh, it's all
So
free.
so let me restate the question so you can hear it, and then maybe it would be good for people to come up because it's hard to hear. So the question is, for people who come to shop, sometimes it's organizations that come to shop. Do they pay? And so if you could come on it.
Project most of it.
Oh, okay.
I get pretty, absolutely not. Nobody pays for anything. It's a 100% nonprofit program, so absolutely not.
Can I ask a question of Ben as well? Or better, okay, so we were at Feeding San Diego last week, and the CEO challenged us with the question of, if we had all the money in the world, what would we do? And so the notion was, and the thought that I had is, well, how do you coordinate a Brother Benno's and a Feeding San Diego, and then a lot of the smaller, the 90 receiving agencies that you have? What would that look like in an ideal world?
I think getting the food to the neighborhoods in need, you're going to have mass distribution centers, something like that. But what I've noticed is trying to have a centralized hub where people can come and get all that, it gets very chaotic and not very specific to people's needs, whether it's dietary or cultural or whatever it might be. The angle to go would be sort of a network of free supermarkets, if you will, that were available in particular neighborhoods that needed it or whatever, and people could qualify and go in and sort of shop. That would allow, I think, a partnership for all these organizations where everybody can play a role equally to a unified kind of vision, something along those lines.
Great idea. Okay, we have a question here.
I do. In the future, will the city of Oceanside consider having the green bags to put food scraps in? Because I'm reading a lot online that people are complaining about smell and dirty bins and flies.
Yeah, so the question is, will people be able to use plastic, compostable green bags in Oceanside? And I want to say that this is a problem in EDCO cities. EDCO cities cannot use plastic compostable bags to put their organic waste in. And
I thought someone said that all the others except for Oceanside use them.
Only
So
Carlsbad.
Carlsbad allows
Oh,
it
okay.
because Carlsbad has an outdoor facility, composting facility. So in Oceanside, what's the response?
Oceanside, single-family residents will be able to use bags that are clear and translucent. They will use plastic and compost bags, but they must be clear and translucent.
Oh,
So meaning that you're going to be taking the waste out of it before it goes into the facility.
Yeah, this is the difference between bags that are accepted and then processed.
Right. So what he's saying is, for Oceanside residents, for the single-family homes, you can put your waste in a bag that's clear, so that they are aware of what's inside of it, and it will be taken out of that before being processed.
Multi-family food scraps and food soil recycling are also able to use clear plastic liners as well.
that's in Oceanside. Very good, thank you.
But not the green ones.
They must be clear and transparent.
So for Oceanside, we do have our guides here, but it does describe, so Waste Management is contractually required to accept the clear translucent bags and the compostable bags.
It would be useful for me to understand why that is. I understand that EDCO can't take them because in the it causes a problem in the digester.
There's a difference, so I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, but so with the clear translucent bags, it's Waste Management's process to identify whether there's contaminants in the bags or not. So if it's clear, they can see that it's not contaminated and then remove the materials from the bags, and that will be part of their process. If it's a compostable bag, they can then just process it at that point. There's two different processes that waste management's material will be going through. The residential material will be going to El Corazon and processed there. The other material, the multifamily and commercial, is going to be going to the food slurry processing and then returning back to our facility. So I'm not sure how that works at their food processing facility, but the material that comes back will have to meet a certain spec in order for us to inject it into our digesters. But our digestion system is different than EDCO's as well.
What would be a contaminant that your digester couldn't use? Why the clear basket?
Well, it could be people, are scraping their food and a fork goes in there. That could be what, our process can't accept, obviously. But the whole purpose is for waste management on their end to be able to see that, yes, this is meeting our requirements. So if it is in an opaque, like a black or a solid white bag, they're going to assume that it's contaminated and it's going to go to landfill. So that's why we're trying to be very specific of, if it's clear, they will open it up and process it that way. If it's not, it's going to be assumed to be contaminated and go to landfill.
Mary Ellen had a question?
Yeah, this goes back to your graph for the amount of, GHG.
Greenhouse
For
gases per
different
100
meat,
grams
right.
of protein of different sources.
Different meats. You went from beef to lamb. Why was pig not on there at all?
It's the source of information. And so we don't have pork there. But pig is different. So beef and lamb, they are both ruminants. And so they actually make a lot more methane in their digestive process. Pigs do not. And so they usually would have less.
Eat more pig.
You can eat more pig.
Reasonably assume that pig is going to be up there with the animal protein, like with the animal protein diet. It's not like it's at the bottom.
But it's going to be closer to chicken than lamb. Yeah.
And on
Beef.
top of that, not only are we putting up with the pollution of pigs eaten here, we are taking the pollution of pigs owned by China.
Yep.
China bought Smithfield. That's one of the biggest pork producers in the country. And that meat goes to China.
Yep.
I mean, it's there. Yeah. So we have lakes of pig. What's another word?
Manure. How's that?
Pig
Excellent.
Pig sewage.
Pig sewage.
Manure.
I like pig poop.
So,
Yeah, lakes of it, I say, make China take their pigs home.
they have a lot of pigs there too. So it is a global issue. Oh, Nancy?
I have a question. The 1383 goal is to take 20% of food that can be used out of the landfill, and I believe that that happened almost instantly. I mean, it was just amazing. I have a friend that runs the San Luis Rey food pantry, and she said as soon as that bill went into effect, they had tried to get the grocery stores to donate, but they wouldn't. And then when the bill went into effect, they were overwhelmed with the amount of food that came in. But my question is, what about expired food or best used by date? So if I'm looking through my cabinet and I'm trying to clear it out so I can get to what I really like to use, but the date is old, what do I do with that? Can I donate it?
I'll just do a little bit first before, because I know Brother Benno as a food recovery organization has probably specific guidelines for people, but just an overall. So in the work I do with Solana Center for Environmental Innovation, we're actually going into these businesses that are required to donate, meaning the food generators like all of these grocery stores, and restaurants, wholesalers, anyone that generates food at a certain capacity, they're required, due to SB 1383, to begin donating all available edible food. That's why these organizations are seeing an influx. There's a lot of confusion, both for commercial and, of course, residents, about expiration dates, use by dates, best by dates, and what those mean. So just a brief overview of them. These dates are not regulated. It is up to the manufacturer what date goes on there. And the general rule is that they are putting the date for the grocery store or the carrier to know when the peak freshness for that product is. And if it's after that, they can no longer guarantee it, which is why most stores pull even dry goods off the shelves because of that date. We as consumers have also learned, mostly incorrectly, that if that date has come and gone, that we need to automatically throw that food out, which is not the case, because again, this is not regulated for food safety. It's not regulated at all. The only item regulated is baby formula, which is a good thing, but it'd be great if we could get some regulations on other items as well. For food donations, both for individuals as residents and for food generators and commercial operations, Feeding San Diego, for example, provides all of its recovery organizations and its generators, if they want it, with a list of how long past one of those dates they can donate based on the item itself. So for example, with dairy, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, you may be more familiar with this, but like 3 days past the expiration date, you're allowed to donate a dairy product, or 6 months past the expiration date for an almond milk, for example. So they have these things, and most stores, and many stores continue to toss items based on these dates instead of paying attention to the donatable date and actually donating that edible food. So, yeah.
That's absolutely the case. We get stuff all the time with that date that it comes in on is their expiration date or best by date. Our policy.
Speak up, please.
Oh, I apologize. That's absolutely the case. We get stuff all the time from these stores that's perfectly good, perfectly edible to be sold, but that best by date is that date or maybe tomorrow or something like that, and they just want to get it off the shelves. Their policy is keep those shelves stocked so everybody's happy when they come to the shop and they look like everything's available to them. Our policy on our end, Feeding San Diego, gives us recommendations for when we can still accept a donation. Beyond that, we have an agreement when you sign up with us that you take an edge on risk, essentially. We're pretty extensive on our end to expect everything, go through every piece of go through all that. Those dates are simply a reference off what Feeding San Diego and other experts have given us. That's our policy on accepting donations and distributing as well.
So it's good though, because you get more food free.
Yes. This is true.
Yeah, when they start following it. And then as a thing, I also like to tell people in most of my education is, because it's something that we're used to now, I think, again, we just toss things once that date happens. It's really important as consumers that we get used to kind of using our own human senses to learn what makes food good or bad or can eat. That means taste, of course, smell, even sound for fermentation. If you open one of those salsas that's been in the back of the fridge and it hisses, that means it started to ferment, right? So we use our own human senses to know if something is safe to eat versus just pulling it out, seeing that it's a couple days past the date and tossing that either in the trash or even the green bin. So I really encourage you guys to kind of take a better look at those.
Is there a guideline, like somewhere to go that has a guideline about for average consumers?
I'm sure
for canned goods or.
I'm sure that there is. I would say something like SaveTheFood.org likely has resources like this. I think for me, as someone that's kind of been testing it out for a long time, for the most part, dry goods of any kind, especially actually dry goods like pasta and things like that, it's crazy that like our salt has an expiration date on the packaging, right? Something that's been in the ground or as a mineral for millions of years, and then it expires next month. So canned goods, things like that are meant to be long shelf stable items are going to have those peak freshness dates on there, so they can truly extend well past that. I know myself, I've eaten canned pumpkin that's been in the back of my pantry for 5 years, and I'm totally fine. So if you open it up, you can tell, again, if there's bulging or anything like that. So just learning a little bit about what means a food is no longer safe to eat. And then for perishable foods, pay more attention to it. It gives you a better guideline for fresh meats and dairies and things like that. It's more important to pay attention to the dates, but it still doesn't mean that it's bad if it goes past, by a certain amount.
Thank you. Any other questions? Connie?
This is for Anna. I've always heard that you had to use worm casting to compost, and you're saying not so much, as long as it's in a sealed container and a smaller sealed.
Well, it has to be a container that has some type of holes on the inside.
Right.
And stuff like that, because you want it to be also the aeration that goes into the
Right.
process. It does get warm, just automatically, just leave it there.
Have to trouble hearing.
No. It does get warm, but that's the normal process of it.
But not, you don't need worm castings.
No,
No, any of that stuff? Okay.
And the advantage of composting the way Anna does is that it's in the ground, and if you're making good soil, worms will appear.
Right. Right, okay.
As opposed to in our worm bin, the worms are kept separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that you want to remember is that when you bucket in the kitchen, you want to empty it out every single day, because as soon as you put stuff inside, it starts to decompose. Like it doesn't take that long. So you want that away from your kitchen every day. It's just like going out to throw out the trash, the same thing. And so anything like spoiled food, anything like that can go in there. Except I would not recommend like cardboard or hard pieces of like plates that are compostable. That's because they take longer.
I see.
So they all organic, just like Liz was saying. If it grows, it goes.
For backyard composting, though, you're not going to put any bones, you're not going to put any oils.
Cheese, no cheese. Yeah.
No cheese.
And I think that's why having this curbside organics recycling available is really exciting, even for home composters, because there are so many items that you still have to keep out of there. Like maybe yours didn't get hot enough for lemon peels or eggshells or something like that, meat, bone, dairy. So even for home composters, I hear that a lot from people. They're like, well, I compost at home, so I don't need to use it. And then I kind of run through like, well, what aren't you putting in your home compost?
Yeah.
And then you could utilize the provided resource as well.
And the one thing that I try to tell people is that you can put, your food soiled napkins or your paper towels that, not that don't have cleaning solution on them, but, if you're worried about smell, just start with that. And then you can use that napkin to, scrape your plate into the bag that they provide, and, it's all good.
But not shredded newspapers.
You know what, EDCO, you can use shredded newspaper in a clear plastic bag in the recycle bin.
Right.
So, but yeah, you don't need to put that into the organics waste.
For composting, you wouldn't put colored newspaper in, I think is the restriction, but otherwise paper's okay, newspaper's okay.
So we have a question in the back?
It's not so much a question. It's Christine with the Tea Madeline across the street. Every day I see just leftovers on the plate. I'm scraping it. I actually stand by the busing station just to see how much food gets wasted. And it is just, to me, it's just incredible waste. So my comment is, or maybe a question, it's regarding food waste. How do we change consumers' behavior about food? It just, I don't know the question.
One thing that we do, that City of Encinitas did was they provided us with containers to take with us to restaurants, so that when we have extra food, we scrape our plates. Usually for leftovers that we can take home, and so that actually works pretty dang well.
Yeah,
but most people don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say
most people don't, and and on the business side of it, it's like, do I make the portion small? But then they start comparing with the next door restaurant, and it becomes this battle. Like in the meantime, the food just gets wasted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think that, so like as some of the things that we do with Solana Center, for example, part of the education for businesses, and the unfortunate part is that the businesses and restaurants being educated are those, directly educated, are those that are required to do edible food recovery, and then you kind of put into it a lot of the organics recycling stuff, but businesses that aren't required, that are smaller, like Petite Madeline's, like your guys aren't going to get an edible food recovery inspection and extra education necessarily, unless it's requested. But there's a lot of things that we give to restaurants as resources, but these aren't things that are going to happen overnight, like portion control, like auditing, saying what's coming back to the kitchen and being dumped the most. Maybe it's fries, right? Maybe people never finish that portion of fries, so you can make that portion smaller for that one item to see if that lowers your plate waste. And then other things, again, that would take time, like there have been studies that if you actually serve on smaller plates, there's a visual thing for us humans that it feels like we're getting more food. So there's all these things that restaurants can do. It's not going to happen overnight. They need consumer buy-in. We've seen restaurants that have had success with offer versus serve, meaning that, for example, a lot of places will offer or will automatically serve two sides with a meal, right? Like to provide value to the customer. But a lot of times that's creating excess waste because maybe they don't actually want that much food or that much. So offering that versus automatically serving it, or not bringing a chips and salsa automatically, actually asking would the table like complimentary bread or things. So there are things that restaurants can do, but all of this implementation of the legislation and the education for both consumers and commercial operators, it's going to take time. That's the biggest thing that I'm seeing as someone that's, you know, in the trenches on all of this, is that it's going to take a lot of time for people to buy in to these concepts, because it's been, you know, almost 100 years now that we have gone the other direction. And I'm very excited for California for us to, you know, kind of be the forefront of the U.S. on this. But yeah, it's going to take time.
So I think we can stop the questions now, and then people will be here for other questions if you have. But I think, you know, this is a wonderful opportunity for you guys for us to be able to educate you with the knowledge that we've learned, and to have these wonderful experts here to be able to answer your questions too. And I hope that you will now go and talk to your neighbors about this, or talk to or ask the city council people, because this is a local issue. You know, that starts in your home, but it also is definitely local to your jurisdiction, but also, you know, to the state and, you know, the nation, of how we can look at food, and, you know, and how it encompasses so much of society, and how it makes a big difference in our climate. So thank you very much.